Welcome to the Urban Wine Club podcast. Pour a glass, sit back, and enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to another amazing episode of the Urban Wine Club podcast. I'm your host, Fotis Stamos, and with me, my co-host, Claudia. Claudia.
We're still working on the intro. We'll get there.
Excellent. So, Claudia, as always, we have a lot of great topics to discuss, a lot of questions that are going on through the industry. And with this episode, what is it we're talking about?
I want to talk about all the things that we as people of the industry probably want to tell diners at restaurants and explain certain things that go on behind the scenes in the wine world, but we kind of can't. You're definitely not going to say that at the table unless I ask.
True, very valid points, and I'm sure you've heard this before. A lot of guests who go out for dinner sometimes will actually kind of take a step back and think about what they just got charged for having either their favorite wine or a wine that they thought was okay, or and so forth. But there's more to it than just that, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great topic to start with is when people complain about price for a wine, whether they know it, they've seen it, or they Googled it, or they searched it on Vivino, what would you say to a customer that's complaining about price?
Well, it all depends, because there's also when they complain about it, right? There's guests that come into the restaurant, they'll sit down, they'll browse and peruse the list, and they're looking at prices first before they look at selections or categories or descriptions. So some people come in with a set mind of what they want to spend too. They come out and they're hoping to spend, like, if they're just going to have glasses of wine, they're looking for the most inexpensive option. And in today's market, and we're going to discuss specifically in the Boston market, if you're out dining, the range at the moment is between, I would say, $13 to $18 a glass average. It's more or less, could be higher than that. And outside the city, whether it's North Shore, South Shore, West, and so forth, we're looking at maybe $12 to $15 a glass. Okay. And I noticed that in my personal experiences, there is a good percentage of guests that are just picking by the lowest price point by the glass. Okay. That's one type of guest. And when someone is looking and saying, oh, oh my God, I can't believe how prices have gone to where I'm paying for a glass which I can purchase for a whole bottle at a retail store. So obviously there's a lot behind it. There's a reason why it costs that much, right? You're coming out, you're getting the experience where you're having someone serve you. You're in someone else's environment, and that environment comes with costs. And the fact that we're doing the job of letting you sit down and leaving everything up to us. It's out of your hands. It's in our hands now. Is where that price starts to be reflective. Right. But it's a hard connection when you're trying to explain that to the guest in that moment. Right.
I think that's there's a very famous rule that applies to pricing wine, specifically wine by the glass. The idea is that if you get the cost of a bottle, that cost is what you would price it for one glass. And there's a number of reasons here, but it's a decent rule of thumb because first and foremost, that means as soon as you crack open that bottle, you're no longer losing money for that bottle, right?
Sure.
Which makes sense. You don't want to open up a bottle of wine, pour one glass, and not know if someone's going to buy the rest of the bottle by the glass, and you would have to waste the rest of the bottle. So it makes sense to have the cost covered.
First and foremost. Yes.
But second, like you said, it's an experience. So whenever someone says, I can go and get a whole bottle of this at a store and have it at home, then I always kind of say, not to be snarky, but I say, go do that.
Well, my response is that, well, you can go to the your retail store and bring it home, but you can't bring with you the servers, the cooks, and the whole dining room with you to your house.
Yes.
So when I mention that and they take a step back, then it kind of makes sense. Like, well, yeah, I guess at the end of the day, if I want this bottle of wine, which, by the way, let me crack it open, if I want this, I know, I'm slacking here. So if I want this bottle that I enjoy to be poured for me, like as is, we'll do a little cheers. Cheers to this episode. Is that if I'm looking for the bottle that I'm enjoying or that I like to be poured for me, the glass is coming from a kitchen that didn't have to clean or polish, and it's going to be watched, meaning that every so often someone's going to check in on me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I guess I will pay
Yeah.
$12 a glass or $15 a glass because it's being served in that
Right.
manner to me.
Yeah. The other thing too is that we, as wine consumers, we have access. I also want to say, do you really think those French fries cost them those truffle fries cost $8 for the
Agreed.
restaurant to serve? No,
Agreed.
it's all worked into the price. But we don't go and Google the current cost of a potato in that area and compare
good
it on
point.
the menu. But
Good
it's
point.
the same concept. We just have access to apps, to Wine Searcher,
Sure.
etc.,
Sure.
to see, oh, what is this somewhere else if I were to buy this from a retailer. So that also is worked into the price for everything. So not only are you getting the experience, but then I also just like to have someone stop and think and like put your business thinking cap on, right? And think about the cost from the labor, front of house, the labor, back of house, the cost, especially in Boston or cities,
Yeah.
like the cost of a building to have a roof over your head.
You don't want to know. Let's just put
So
it that
bad.
way. You it's better that you don't know.
It's, yeah.
But it is costly, to your point.
It's sickening.
And it's the world we live in, and
Yeah.
there's rising costs everywhere. So going out today, just keep in mind that it's going to be pricier.
Yeah.
But what I also want to point out is that we're hoping that that pricier experience will give us also a memorable experience
Yes.
as well.
The idea is to keep in mind that, yes, you're spending more, but it's for a memorable experience. But yeah, it's very expensive to do business nowadays. And I also always like to think of like the unknowns that I'm unaware of. Like
Right.
if there's a server carrying glassware and they trip and all that falls, right?
Okay.
Or if there is food that has to be thrown out. There's a massive amount of waste and risk in the restaurant business.
Sure,
So you just
sure.
have to remember not only the cost of doing business and the value you're getting for that experience, but also there's just a massive amount of unknown
Right.
for the person that's operating that restaurant. And yeah, it's always going to cost more, whether it's a French fry or whether it's a glass of wine or anything in between.
And having said that, I mean, this is more for this actual. My perspective was for those that are just looking for a glass of wine, and then you have the perspective on those that are looking to purchase a bottle of wine, where the $15 glass, okay, but then when you get into the bottles, where some of these bottles are ranging, the average bottle of wine that's in mid-range quality is now hovering about $65 to $70 a bottle today,
Yeah.
and obviously that's going to jump your total, your bill, and that kind of also hits a little harder when we're looking for a bottle to share, because maybe it's just if it's the two of us, or if there's the four of us, we might need two bottles. So
Right.
that's another area that folks are also trying to adjust, because pre-COVID, some of these selections were in the $50 range,
Right.
so the $20 jump per
Yeah.
bottle, and obviously that adds up. But again, a lot of the programs that are out there are featuring wines that they believe in, that are curated for the concepts, and some of these wines are coming from areas around the world that are either limited in production,
Yeah.
they're allocated, or they're here seasonally, so they're priced accordingly as well. And I think that for the most part, most programs do not want to feature wines that are available in retail to begin with,
Yeah.
to avoid that kind of that kind of funny area.
Right. That's the other industry secret, is that there are a lot of valuable wines that are very rare that are labeled as, and it depends on the market that you're in and what the laws are in each state, but there are some restaurant only wines. Something's really scarce and they only have a few cases for each market, and they will say, I will only sell this to restaurants.
Right.
So the price of that wine is going to be higher, because not only was it probably an expensive wine to begin with, but there's this element where it is rare and you can only get it at very few restaurants,
Right.
and you'll never be able to get that from a retailer.
Right.
So there's also a lot of, when you see wines that you don't recognize or why they're priced so high, it's probably because you actually can't go down to a retailer and get that bottle and take it home.
Yeah, I'm a stickler for when I dine at restaurants for the first time. I'm always looking at carefully like what the selections are, And if I see a lot of retail wines out there, I always say they did not do their homework.
Yeah.
It was just not, there's no love here.
Right.
And the other thing that I always want to point out too, Claudia, is that I also pay attention to the way wine lists are formatted to
What's
justify.
your preferred format?
For me specifically is, and it depends on the concept. Let's say the concept is just one ethnicity. Let's say it's an Italian restaurant, and it's an all-Italian wine list. All wine lists, in my opinion, should be listed by variety, producer, region, and then price. And then those are broken down by regional categories for both white and red.
But hold
But
on.
that's for, this is me, and you
I
can
have
tell me what you like.
questions, I have questions.
Yeah. That's for a specific concept. If the concept is an infusion or it's a modern approach to certain types of cuisines, then the format I still think should be listed first, variety, producer, region. But as far as the way it's formatted, I think depending on the type of clientele, it could be formatted in a sense where lighter style, medium style, fuller style.
Okay.
Right? As a starting point. But again, depending on who you're catering to as an audience, that could be discussed and debatable.
Okay.
As you're going to say.
Like, try to sit patiently. Okay, but what if variety producer? What if we're talking about champagne on the list? You would still say the varietals, like no one knows. A lot of people don't
so
know
that's
the
why I said
variety.
if you go to an Italian restaurant, it's all Italian wine list. That's my approach, my thoughts. If you have an international program, and your section is bubbles and sparkles, I think most champagnes are a blend of different options between Pinot Noir, Chardonnay,
Yeah.
and Pinot Meunier, right?
Okay, so
I don't see a
you have
problem.
a section, saying like bubbles section.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I always want to make it clear that the bubbles and sparkles section should be separated.
Yeah.
I've seen programs that integrate them.
No.
Yeah, but it's for whatever reason, everyone has this really like new approach to how they want to express their programs, which is
Yeah.
fine. I'm always looking at it from the end user first,
Yeah.
versus what we know and what we like and what we think.
Right.
But I think that when you look at a program and it's formatted in a certain way, you can see that they put effort into it. I
Yeah.
believe the more effort into the format, the better quality selections you're going to get, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If the format is very loose and casual, and there's not much effort into it, then be assured as a guest or consumer, some of those selections might not be the best from
Yeah.
a quality perspective, and the
Okay.
pricing is still high.
So I want to ask you then, you're going to a new restaurant, you've never seen the program before, but you also have some knowledge as to the business. You're
Sure.
on the retail side, the on-premise
Sure.
side, you're in the wine business, right? What are you going for wine? Like, is it a glass? Is it a bottle? Is it a certain region, a certain kind?
Good
What's
question.
the best quality
So-
to price ratio?
New restaurant going in, I'm always looking to start with a glass of wine.
Okay.
The glass of wine buys me time.
Oh, smart.
Right? So I
Sip while studying.
never go in all in. I like to get a glass of wine, and it's usually going to be white for me. Usually white wine to start. I like to sip on it as everyone at the table is probably engaged in conversation, discussing what's on the menu. Everyone's really in the food side of it, and I'm the only one sitting there with the wine list, just like, deep into like thought.
Yeah.
And then I go for the glass of wine, white, and then I'll look at, what are they featuring? Are they doing it by region, country, varietal?
Yeah.
I look at that first. And for me, I look at who's with me too, right?
Right.
If it's people from the industry together, I'll become more adventurous. If it's friends and family, or if it's just my wife and my kids, and my wife who's just a very, casual drinker, I'll go like something that's more approachable and easy. But
Okay.
if with, people from the industry together, I'll become more adventurous. And what does really adventurous mean? It's probably choosing varieties and wines that are not common
Yeah.
in the market.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I'm always, looking for the next best European feature.
Gotcha. So you're thinking of where you're eating, who you're eating
With,
with,
yes.
what you're going to be eating,
Yes.
and then also kind of on the lookout for something that's new. So you'll probably steer away from brands that you know you could
Correct.
get at a store.
Of course.
Got it.
Or things that I have at home. Like, I don't want to drink what I can drink at home when I'm out.
Right.
I want
Okay.
something that I've never had before. And I'll take chances. And this is what happens more so. There are times where I'll order a bottle of wine and I'm like on the fence about it. But I'm like, okay, it is what it is. I'm going to go with it. And then usually by the end of my experience, I say to myself, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, my perception will change because, you know, the wine is changing in the glass, it's changing in the bottle, conversation's happening, my mood's changing, our palate is just completely like worked out. So I'm always looking for the next best thing. I always recommend to guests, let's choose something that you're not used to. Let's choose something that you haven't had before. Most guests are hesitant, they put the brakes on because they have the fear of what if I don't like it.
Okay.
You know?
Well, so here's another situation where I know there can be fear or pressure. You're at a table with, I don't know, a handful of people, and you're going to, someone just says, oh, order for all of us, 1 or 2 bottles. And say you don't know everybody's palate all that well. Say you don't know them that well, so this is like a work environment. And you also are not going to be like, okay, everybody stop and write down what you're eating. So you have to try and accommodate people you don't know very well.
Right.
Potentially multiple courses with different kinds of food.
Right.
And people with different preferences.
Right.
What would you suggest? How do you navigate that? What is like a people pleaser wine that's going to work whether you're having calamari as an appetizer or oysters or...
I think that if you're hosting for a group of people, 6 top, 8 top, 10 top, you're hosting, meaning you're the one that's making the decision for the wine.
Yeah.
Whether you're in a steakhouse, whether you're in an Italian restaurant, whether you're in a trendy restaurant, I always say the safe bet is order in the beginning of your experience, obviously you have multiple bottles, do a white to begin, and let that white be, let it be citrusy, tart, higher levels of acid in the beginning, and then second round, go with a red wine that's also on the bitter side, dry side with structure. And over time, what's happening with all the guests at the table is their palate's working. So their palate is also going to become a little more intuitive to flavors and textures with the food. So by the time they're having their dinner, I guarantee you this because I see it all the time, they're going to enjoy it, whether they like those style of wines or not. Can
you give me an example of the white and of the red?
So to make it easy for our audience, like starting off is either start with a European Sauvignon Blanc, it could be French, it could be Italian, or something that has high acid, citrusy, and a really crisp finish. And then for the reds, I would say you can go either Tuscan reds, you can go Bordeaux, approachable Bordeaux's, or you can go Northern Italian red as well. Wines that have more structure, they're a little leaner, a little bitter because they're going to play with the food when they come out.
Okay, cool. I think that's
a stepping stone.
Yes, and this calls for part 2 because next I want to talk about for customers the dining experience and what it means to how to order wine, and also like how to analyze wine and taste it when you're at the table, what that etiquette looks like, and the why.
Agreed.
But until then,
cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.